This podcast is part of the Some Buddies Network. You're never alone when you've got some buddies.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons, or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by two dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as Mr. Most Days Off, and today we have a lot to do about something, because we're reviewing Much Ado About Nothing. But before we dive into the episode, coming along with me, of course, your co-host with the most, Richie the Whiz Kid. How you doing today, Rich?
As usual, Miles, I am fine and dandy like sour candy. You know, it just occurred to me that I should have been looking for a more Shakespearean plotline in this episode. I don't know why I didn't go into it immediately thinking that, because I knew the title referenced that every time I've heard it, but I didn't think about actually looking through the episode for that. But that's okay. We got plenty of other stuff we need to talk about on this one.
Great start.
Yeah. Let me throw it back to you. The man, the myth, the nigh Mets fan. It is Miles.
Well, since we already talked about the title twice, let's go ahead and say that it is, of course, derived from the Shakespeare play Much Ado About Nothing. And actually, though, that wasn't even the original title. It was originally titled The Anti-Immigrant Song, which is actually a reference to Led Zeppelin's Immigrant Song. So, already
Wait, Shakespeare was doing a play about a song that hadn't existed yet?
It was a Shakespeare play about a Led Zeppelin song, is how I understand it. Yeah. But no, it was going to be the anti-immigrant song, and that might be a good place to start with the serious part of this podcast, which we, of course, here at Best Darn Diddly usually like to keep things very lighthearted and fun, as The Simpsons is a comedy show that very, very much influenced both of us as comedians, or wannabe comedians might be more accurate. I do want to just quickly point out, however, that we are, in fact, two white guys, and we are going to be talking about an episode that is, honestly, impressively ahead of its time in a very depressing sort of way. Like, it's very relevant to some things that are going on in real life, both with The Simpsons, the documentary, the Response episode, and even bigger things like our president of the United States and his insane beliefs and policies against immigrants.
Yeah, this episode made me feel like really sad early on, and you know, with the jokes and the lightheartedness of The Simpsons, it kind of eases that a little bit. But like you said, Miles, with everything going on in our neck of the woods in this day and age, it was hard not to feel a little affected by this one. And again, like you pointed out, and it's really hard to see that we really haven't come that far in almost 23 years since this episode.
Might even say we've taken some steps back as of late.
Yeah, exactly. But we will try to keep some lightheartedness about it, because, Miles, we are talking about The Simpsons, so there's definitely going to be some jokes and some good feelings in here as well. So we're going to try to keep our head above water on this.
Well, yeah, like you said, it's a funny show, and here's our commitment to you. For the rest of this episode, we are treating this like a great classic episode of The Simpsons, because that's what it is, and that's how we're going to talk about it. So we're going to do our best to just have a good time, even though there are obviously going to be some sensitive topics that get discussed. And just one last quick reminder that we love each and every one of you out there. We're so proud to have listeners in multiple countries around the world. So anything we say that might feel insensitive is not said in an effort to offend. It's said in an effort to entertain and make you laugh. So yeah, that's moving forward from there. We're going to be talking about Much Ado About Nothing today.
The views and beliefs of our president are not necessarily those of the Best Darn Diddly hosts.
This episode aired originally on May 6, 1996, which is actually Josh Weinstein's 30th birthday. It happened to air on that exact date. So,
wow.
As a 33-year-old,
what have we done with our lives,
that makes me
Miles?
feel very unaccomplished, because this episode is amazing, and it's not even his first one to air. Somewhere a choice was made incorrectly, and I have not gotten the restart yet. So this simulation commences with this podcast.
You can't rage quit life, Miles.
That's what I'm saying. I'll quickly go ahead and mention the commentary for this episode included Josh Weinstein, like I said, talking about an episode that aired on his 30th birthday, his co-showrunner, Bill Oakley, the creator, Matt Groening, the director, Susie Dieter, and the writer of this episode, David S. Cohen, who is a very prolific writer of The Simpsons and of the show Futurama. And this episode is unique in some ways to many of the other episodes of The Simpsons, and though a lot of times this seems to be true of David Cohen himself, this episode was barely rewritten. It was very, very close to the original draft, and some of the humor, some of the things I'll point out, and just some of the reoccurring themes of the humor are very Cohen-esque, and that is essentially a way to say that the other writers really just can't do anything to it, because it's so from his perspective and often so unique in his sense of humor in a really positive way, but like they're just jokes that work and you can't tweak them. So a huge compliment was paid to David S. Cohen by Josh and Bill just on the fact that so many of his scripts are like that, where they took very little time in the rewrite room.
Oh, I'm sure that feels really good as a staff of writers when you don't have to do that much extra work on a particular episode.
I was thinking you were going to say, like, oh, that must feel really nice whenever, as a writer, you don't feel like your work has to be changed. But you went to the completely other direction on that. Like, hell yeah, week off of work.
Yeah. I'm all about that PTO.
That makes sense. We start off this episode with a bear. Yes, an actual bear walking through the streets of Springfield, specifically down Evergreen Terrace, when Ned Flanders comes driving by in his Geo and immediately starts to panic, so he drives his car into a tree, even though there is in no way, shape, or form, like, the bear did not act aggressively. He was just there, and Ned started to completely freak out.
Dude, let's be honest. If you were driving home and saw a bear on your street, even if it was being calm, you would still be like, what the fuck? Like, bears are massive creatures. On movies and TV shows, you see them and you're like, oh, I would do this in this situation.
I wouldn't drive into a tree. I can say that pretty soundly. Like, I feel confident that you're right in the sense that, yes, I'm quite certain I would, quote-unquote, freak out a little bit, but I wouldn't react by driving into a tree. I mean, if anything, I would go in reverse a little bit. He was the only one on the street.
All right, you heard it here first. He would not drive into a tree. Start your betting now. Somebody get me a bear.
I wouldn't destroy the poor Simpsons mailbox, that's for sure.
Dude, I was really upset with Maude in this scene. Like, a lot of my theories, I feel like, that I borrowed were coming back in this very instance here. When he, like, gets out of his car and he's trying to get through the front door of his house, and Maude's on the other side going, I can't work the knob, which is both sexually funny, but also I feel like she's not actually trying to open the door, and she's trying to let Ned get killed. Like, did you get that feeling at all?
I don't ever dwell on that one as much as you, but I can completely see that, though, now that you say it. It's almost like, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot how to work the doorknob, honey, as she's, like, holding it shut.
And he dives through the freaking glass, so, like, he had no other option. So Maude was trying to off him right there.
And from her perspective, I have to assume that death by bear pays out, like, at least double in a life insurance policy.
Well, especially when there's no bear tax yet.
Yeah, that's true. That's coming. At least, like, one of those dollars goes off into a side pot for future bear emergencies.
Well, Miles, it's not coming if you can't work the knob.
Oh, we had to go there. I will back up just real quick and say that this whole inspiration for this start came from the real-life news in California, which at that time especially, it seems like there was an abundance of bears that were, like, basically being forced out of their natural homes. Like, the wilderness they lived in was being destroyed, and all these neighborhoods were being put up in them, so the bears were finding themselves wandering into these neighborhoods, essentially. And
causing people to run into trees.
Yeah, all the time.
Yes.
But basically, that was kind of being a little bit of a bit where they were making fun of this, because a lot of the times, anytime there was a bear that would be, like, honestly, it wasn't too uncommon that they would actually be in people's swimming pools, believe it or not, which Like, I've seen videos of, like, gators in Florida
Yeah.
being in people's swimming pools, which is kind of funny, but, like, to your credit, think about your, like, driving, I would be like, okay, I'm in a car, I can probably get away.
I can outrun it.
I'm protected. Like, in a swimming pool, I'm already exposed because I'm walking out in my swimsuit with, like, a towel. I probably got, like, some sort of music jamming because I'm ready to just, like, chill by the pool. Or maybe a podcast going or whatever. Shout out to the Somebody's Podcast Network. But then, like, you got your shades on, you turn the corner, and you see a bear in your pool. Like, that's gonna freak you out a lot more than driving by.
My cousin, part of my family lives in Pennsylvania, and they live kind of in a woodsy area. Some of them do. And my cousin and his wife have told me before about how they went into their backyard, which is just wide open spaces, and they saw a little cub, and then like the mom was like right around it too, like in their literal backyard.
Yeah,
they're just like, oh yeah, that's pretty normal.
That's just bears. No big
Yeah,
deal. It's just what they do here.
and then he ran into a tree.
They're making fun of the fact, though, that, like, if one bear showed up, there would be news reports everywhere, and it would blow up and essentially cause this sort of hysteria where people were far more afraid of bears walking into or wandering into their neighborhood than was actually necessary. Like, it really wasn't happening nearly as much as you would expect by the amount of coverage it was getting on TV.
It's bearsteria.
Unfortunately, also at this time, the other main issue of this show was also heavily in the California news, and that's because there was actually a current bill in the works directly critiquing or directly addressing, I should say, the idea of illegal immigration in California, and I'll definitely talk more about that. But basically what I'm saying is all of the influence from this episode, according to the writer, David Cohen, came from him watching the California news, and essentially these are real-life events that were occurring at the time that this episode was created.
When I think about episodes that do that, the first one that always comes to mind is when Springfield gets two different area codes for their telephones, because like we were literally going through that change as that episode aired. So that always stuck out in my mind, that like the Simpsons are very on the nose when it comes to like things that are happening in the world.
I didn't think about that, but I imagine that episode is going to be really confusing for any younger viewers, if there are any, as I learned recently with our guest that told us there was no more, it was Ryan, he told us there was no more, like, Simpsons influence with the youth. So sad, so sad. We've done something wrong, America. But just that idea, if, like, somebody did watch The Simpsons that wasn't alive at that time, they'd be like, wait, numbers had 7 digits at one point? Like, what the hell?
You had so much more space in your brain to memorize phone numbers.
Yeah, that's a huge percentage. Moving into the script, though, we see that Homer is fine with the bears wandering the streets as long as he has beer in the fridge.
And as long as he's not the Empson family.
Oh, yeah, and yeah, we do also see that his mailbox is destroyed and being shown on the news, but the S has been ripped off, so he's like, ha ha, those poor Empson people. Good thing we're not them. Pretty funny. But of course, when Homer does go to the fridge, he sees not 1, not 2, but 3 boxes of baking soda and absolutely nothing else.
All right, that does it. If I'm going to be trapped in the house, I gotta go and get some beer.
So Homer creates a plan where he's actually going to scurry out of the second-story window, drape over his car, I think by the power line, and immediately it goes bad when the wire rips right off the side of the house. But luckily, Bart is there to grab him by the pants. So now he's able to dangle over the car and over the bear, but then almost immediately his pants actually slip off. So he now falls in his whitey-tighties right in front of the bear, and just the plan goes as bad as it possibly could, is the idea here.
And the pants land on his head after that, so he's like wearing them like these huge ears, basically.
Luckily for Homer, however, the police arrive to save the day, and they actually tranquilize both Barney, who just happens to be walking by, and the bear.
Wiggum is not a good shot. Let's put that out there. Because that bear is right in front of him, and the first shot just goes way left.
But dude, it's so great because Barney actually pulls the dart out of his neck, cracks it in half, and starts drinking the tranquilizer.
Yeah, when he realized the high that it gives him, he's like, yeah, I want some more of this shit. You know, This episode reminds me of one that's going to be years down the road where Homer actually has like a closer encounter with the bear where he actually becomes terrified, and it's recorded on the news, and like everyone calls him like a wuss basically. But I was like, well, this happened on the news, and it's almost worse because he was de-pantsed in front of the bear.
Pretty much any time you lose your pants, it makes the situation worse. Or better. One of the two. But as Barney and the bear are taken away to their respective homes, I guess.
Well, but I like how Wiggum arrests both the bear and Barney on one count of being a bear and one count of being an accessory to being a bear.
Maude is, of course, in an absolute frantic panic to Marge, and everyone's freaking out until Homer finally decides enough is enough. I'm sick of these constant bear attacks. It's like a frickin' country bear jamboree around here. So the country bear jamboree line is just an example of like that Cohenism where it really doesn't make any sense, but it's somehow really funny. Like he just does that, and keep in mind he was the person that invented the word cromulent. So like the mispronunciation thing is often something that he pulls off very well.
Well, and also, as Ned will point out, this is like the only bear that's ever been in town, which also makes it equally funny.
Well, especially when we get to the tiger example later, as terms of how it's working, which is really great. But that's not for now. Right now it's mobbing time. And of course, if there is an angry mob in town that's not directed at a Simpson, it's probably led by one. And in this case, it's Homer, who chants proudly, "We're here! We're queer! We don't want any more bears! We're here! We're queer! We don't want any more bears!"
Hey, that's a pretty catchy chant. Where did you hear it?
Oh, I heard it at the mustache parade they have every year.
Oh, the imagery.
Richie, I must ask you if you got that joke.
Oh. I'm twirling my mustache while I have you explain it to me.
Nice. Mayor Quimby is upset with this giant mob approaching his office, but when he asks if they have an appointment, they do, because Skinner phoned ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I hate to break it to you, but this town is infested by bears.
Yeah, and these ones are smarter than the average bear. They swiped my picnic basket.
Think of the children!
All right, I promise to take swift and decisive action against these hibernating hucksters.
Yay!
And then as the crowd leaves happily, it's actually Quimby who apparently stole the picnic basket because he pulls it out as he starts to eat Moe's sandwich to him, and he laughs to himself.
Those picnic baskets don't belong to you.
You just said one of the most iconic lines in the entire series, really, and a lot of that's due to the meme that's come from it, but at the same time, it's pretty amazing to think that Helen Lovejoy's "Won't Somebody Think of the Children" has become such a standout line for this episode, because this is, in fact, the only episode it's set in. And it was actually supposed to just be a joke about the idea that it seems like no matter what the debate is, like anytime there's any sort of political or social justice style or like social divide, I should say, not social justice, but like a social divide or in any sort of controversy at all, it seems like some asshat will always be like, won't somebody think about the children, even if you're talking about like R-rated movies or violent video games that aren't intended for children and things of that nature. It's like, no, we're not going to think of the children because we're not talking about things that are meant for children.
I found that it seemed like there were a lot of things in this episode that were memes or turned into meme forms or iconic lines, and I did not realize there were so many in this particular episode.
A lot of the Bear Force stuff I've seen turned into memes, which is really fun.
And The Rock.
That's a big one. One of the really funny things too, I love that we're going to see very quickly that there is in fact a full-on Bear Force patroller. Yeah, Bear Patrol is essentially what it is.
Full force, Bear
the Bear
Patrol.
Force. But like, I mean, like really, really quickly, we see that there's not only vans driving through the city, but I love one of my favorite shots is they're looking up into the clouds and you see a stealth bomber like jet that is part of the bear control, all for just $5 a paycheck.
All right, that's not very much.
I do love here, though, we get one of the best examples of just the fallacy of Homer's logic sometimes, and we're going to talk more about that, but it's Homer and Lisa chatting, and Homer points out, not a bear in sight. That bear patrol must be working like a charm.
That's spacious reasoning, Dad.
Thank you, dear.
By your logic, I could claim that this rock keeps tigers away.
Ooh, how does that work?
It doesn't work. It's just a stupid rock.
Uh-huh.
But I don't see any tigers around. Do you?
And Homer pulls out some money. Lisa, I want to buy your rock.
And this little bit with Lisa reminded me of Grandpa and Bart from last week's episode, where at first Lisa's like, no. Okay, and takes it.
I do like that she does end up taking it, because, I mean, it's money's money after all. And,
yeah.
I mean, it's not her job to make her dad smarter. You can't put that weight on her shoulders.
But you can put the weight of a rock on Homer's shoulders.
But this tiger repellent rock bit is actually, it's become super iconic to the point that Harvard Business Review actually described this as a classic example of the informal fallacy of assuming that correlation implies causation. Mike Moffat also called it the best all-time discussion of faulty reasoning.
Wow. I love it when these big themes are taken from The Simpsons and explored, and they're always relevant, man. Like, it's really cool.
Somebody started debating with me the other day about, like, the idea that The Simpsons and Family Guy and American Dad and basically Futurama, he's like, they're all basically the same. And I very strongly debated against that because I feel like and it's not just because of this podcast. I would argue there's shows like Futurama, which is another grading project, or Rick and Morty, which isn't, where there's so much effort put into the intelligence and the humor sometimes, and I don't think any of them are as strong as The Simpsons, especially when you get into the meta levels of things. There's some, just the jokes that are commonly in the background, or the fact that they take the time to get the math and their math-based jokes correct. All of those things, I think, put this show on just a slightly different level, and I stand by that.
Well, but that's like saying every sitcom about an American family is the exact same. From the outside, yeah, they all look relatively the same. It's essentially like this rock topic, like, oh, from the outside, these are all cartoon shows about families of 5. Like, they must all be the exact same thing, except for Futurama. But along that path, that's a dangerous path to walk down on anything, really.
Yeah, I think this cat and I just like debating, so he was poking my buttons. But it was a good conversation.
Fair enough. I hate that person.
Yeah, he's not fond of you either. No.
Was it me we were having this argument with?
That would actually not surprise me, that you like to argue so much that you would forget which side you took on something, but that's for a different conversation.
It's for a different debate.
Right at that moment, though, Homer's distracted from his debate with his daughter to getting his paycheck, which he says it best when he says, "Woo! A perfect day. 0 bears and 1 big fat hairy paycheck."
Rip.
Hey, how come my pay's so low? Bear Patrol tax? This is an outrage! It's the biggest tax increase in history!
Actually, Dad, it's the smallest tax increase in history.
Let the bears pay the bear tax. I pay the Homer tax.
That's homeowner tax.
Well, anyway, I'm still outraged. So much to love here. From the whole scene is great. All the way, it's one long scene too, all the way through the Tiger Rock argument, all the way through this paycheck. One thing, just to put the joke into a little perspective, Homer's pay slip actually reads that he's got his gross pay of 40 hours for $479.80, which puts him at $11,995 per hour. Federal withholding of $56.25, FICA $36.34, state $10.45, municipal $9.37, and according to Homer, the biggest tax hike in history a bear patrol tax of $5, leaving Homer with $362.19.
Man, it must suck to live in a state that charges you tax on your paychecks. But this little bit, the homeowner tax, I have done that bit since the first time I saw this episode. I don't
heard
know
you
why.
say I pay the Richie tax so many damn times in my life already. Like, it's just, yeah. And it's fine. I totally understand why. This is one that sticks out with you.
Any homeowner tax or bear tax bit that I can do from this, I've done for my entire life. It always comes up.
Sure.
You jerk.
It makes sense. I'm 100% with you. I'm just I've known you long enough to have heard it a time or two. I'm sure you've never heard any of my material on repeat.
Nope.
Not once.
You're always fresh.
Well, Homer's outraged, and he once again brings a mob of people with him to display just how mad he is. And this time they're back yelling at Quimby, but he's got a new chant for the people.
Down with taxes! Down with taxes! Down with taxes!
Are those morons getting dumber or just louder?
Dumber, sir.
Apparently there was originally a scene here that was cut that was going to have Quimby learning that he was dangerously close to losing the moron vote.
That might hit a little too close on the nose.
Maybe. Well, Quimby thinks quick on his feet. He knows that all he needs in a situation like this is a scapegoat, and that's exactly what he finds. They want the Bear Patrol, but they won't pay taxes for it, so what will they pay taxes for? Well, obviously, they'll fight against illegal immigrants that should be disposed of, according to Quimby, because they're the reason that taxes are going up. Thank God we don't live in a world that could have a politician as dumb as Mayor Quimby is in a show in real life. I'm so happy to live in a country where that's just not possible.
And immigrants, I knew it was them. Even when it was the Bears, I knew it was them.
The crowd is so quick to turn, like an angry mob would be.
Or like how people just believe things that politicians say would be.
And very quickly we see the town is swept over with the idea of Proposition 24. The proposition to get rid of immigrants. And everyone's cheering for it. The 24 number in this case did come actually from David Cohen's baseball number when he was younger, which he actually took from Willie Mays. The number 24 he thought was a cool number, and he, as a kid, wanted to be a pro baseball player, though that did not work out.
But he got to be on a show that's now in the Hall of Fame.
That's true, baseball. Yeah, it kind of does come full circle, doesn't it? That's an interesting point. And he got his baseball number in the show, which is kind of cool.
Yep. And now we're going to show you that the education system in America is worse than those of other countries.
Thank goodness we got a handle on that bullying thing, am I right? In this case, it's really sad because at school, the kids are picking on Uter. Nelson's like, "Hey, German boy, go back to Germania."
I do not deserve this. I have come here legally as an exchange student.
Young man, the only thing we exchanged for you is our national dignity.
Oh.
It's just so sad to see, like, that Principal Skinner has flipped like this. Like, you would think that of all the people in the school, he would be the one that would, well, maybe Willie, but, maybe they're getting rid of him for a reason.
What? You want to pick on immigrants? Then pick on Willie Miles.
Willie, please. The students want to pick on someone their own size.
That was, despite the dark tone of the scene, that was one of my favorite jokes in that episode.
It is really funny.
It's like a twist on the pick on somebody your own size bit. I love it.
And it's so just sad, though. Like I said, I mean, there's humor to it. And again, at the time, too, based on real life events, but kind of giving it that spin where literally now just all immigrants. Like, it's not even like they're not picking and choosing. It's like anyone that is not an American by birth, essentially. They all turned into Donald Trump really fucking fast, is what I'm trying to say.
I guess so, yeah.
At home, though, we start to see Homer is taking a liking to this proposition, and Lisa is immediately upset with her father about it.
I don't see how you can support Proposition 24, Dad.
Open your eyes, Lisa. Our schools are so jam-packed with immigrants, people like Bart have lost the will to learn.
There's no denying it, sis.
Oh, I love that Bart is just the ultimate opportunist, and he's like, what? Yeah, that's why.
That's why I fail at everything.
Yeah. Lisa points out, though, that, even the Simpson family immigrated from somewhere originally. They weren't always Americans. And that's when Grandpa Simpson comes in.
The story of the Simpsons family began in the old country. I forget which one exactly. My dad would drone on and on about America. He thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. Sliced bread having been invented the previous winter.
And we cut to a flashback where we see now a young Abe with his father, and his dad is holding up a pamphlet about America. See that, son? That's where we're going to live. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday.
Later that day, we set sail for America.
Maybe it was today. And as they're on the boat coming across to see the States for the very first time, they look out on the horizon and see Lady Liberty herself. He actually points to the Statue of Liberty and says, see that, son? That's our new home. And then we see that, he meant that really literally, because they moved into the Statue of Liberty.
Yay! I love America!
Abe, supper's on!
We had to move out once we filled the entire head with garbage. You know what I find funny about this scene is that, Bart had just gotten respect for Abe in the last episode, and it's already gone in this scene.
Yeah, he's back to telling his far-fetched tales, and I really appreciate he came from the old country. I don't really remember which one. Honestly, that's totally me with my heritage. I know I came from somewhere most likely European, but I have no idea where, really. It's just, I don't know. So that
Get
really
your ass back to
resonates with
Eurasia,
me.
Miles.
I need, what is it, the 23andMe? No, I don't. Nobody needs that shit. It's a waste of money. But that's just my opinion, man.
Is that like a genealogy thing?
Yeah, it's one of those things
thing?
where you can get a breakdown of where your ancestry comes from.
Everyone's just doing that to make sure they weren't related to a Nazi, let's be honest.
A lot of hidden, shredded 23andMe results, I'm guessing. Oh, what? People are like, hey, didn't you order that 23andMe thing? Are you excited for your results? Yeah.
9!
They still haven't come yet. I might have to contact the company. Whatever. Moving back to this episode, we see at the Quickie Mart, Homer is talking to Apu about how great everything's going to be once the immigrants are shipped out of Springfield.
Sir, it may surprise you to know that I am an immigrant.
Psh, you? Get out! Phrasing there, Homer.
Yeah.
And we learn that, and Pooh is in fact an illegal immigrant, and that if Prop 24 passes, he would be forced to leave.
I wish I could have stayed one more year or two. There was so much I wanted to see and to do and to have done to me.
I like that line a lot. And you see Homer really contemplates, morally, he feels like there's a moment here where he's kind of on the teeter-totter, but it quickly passes as he goes back to supporting 24. I will also, just on a very, completely unrelated note, point out that in the background there's a couple of arcade games, and I thought it was pretty interesting for this episode, dealing with this bear disaster, that one of the arcade machines, it was like a bear hunting game, I thought.
Oh, relevant.
Maybe I was wrong. Now that I think about it, it might have been a shark hunting game. It was definitely a hunting game, and I'm pretty sure it had a bear on it.
Or a cackle of bears.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That episode right there is one that really got me. I wish I could have stayed one more year or two, so...
Yeah, that's where the episode gets really heavy. I mean, that's where, up until this point, even when they're dealing with the way that they're talking about illegal immigrants and whatnot, it's done from such a, silly, almost, buffoonish manner, just because it's, silly Homer ideas, essentially. But this is the moment where you realize that these words matter, and these ideas are going to affect people that we know and love from Springfield that would be, for us as the viewer, I think you kind of know, like, more than likely they're not shipping off a bunch of our favorite characters, but, like, if you're viewing it from the perspective of, like, treating these like a family, like, you start to realize there's some real life implications that are going to be taking effect as we move into our second act.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, but I also meant because looking back at this day and age of what's going on, that line really got to me.
I got you. Yeah, we said it at the beginning of the episode. This episode is remarkably ahead of its time. Or maybe the United States is just remarkably behind the times. I'm not sure. Or maybe it's a combination of both of those factors. But it's bizarre. Very much like, and to some extent, the way when we talked about Homer Badman, just the way they were dealing with, like, feminist protest and things of that nature. How it seemed like the Simpsons can see the future. Obviously that's the answer. I mean, I don't usually believe in conspiracies and things of that nature, but this one has a lot of facts behind it, folks.
Or they keep taking the dumbest route, thinking, surely the world won't go down this road, and then we immediately
and the world's like, hold my beer. And speaking of beer, we find ourselves opening up Act 2 at Moe's Tavern, and Moe and the barflies are all making signs.
You know what really aggravates me? It's them immigrants. They wants all the benefits of living in Springfield, but they ain't even bother to learn themselves the language.
Hey, those are exactly my sentimonies. Yeah, you said it, Bon.
Oh, and Moe's an immigrant. It doesn't make any sense. He's hiding well.
Yeah, that's they do mention that in the commentary, and I think that there are, to some extent, I think there are people in the world that really do that. They try to essentially hide behind enemy lines, and like then I don't really know in this situation if that would work, but I think from like. There's times when people might feel ostracized that they just find it easier to be like, yeah, and I mean, that's like a really sad approach. You should just, not do that. But I
there were
see
times
it happening.
There were times in American history where cultural groups of people thought it was best to just try to blend into, like, quote unquote, the white man to be like accepted in society.
Yeah.
And especially after it didn't work for a particular group of people go in the opposite direction. The next group came in saying, we're going to try to just culturally adapt and make it seem like we were always here and with you guys, which is really, really sad that, like, you can't bring that heritage with you and just be yourself. But, I mean, that's the way that, man, freaking American history. Let's continue.
America. So Marge and Lisa, basically the Simpsons family without Homer, go through the crowd of picketers to get to the Quickie Mart where they see Apu is actually offering Ganesha Yoo-hoo. To make the protesters go away, which this was actually a joke that caused a little bit of friction in the writer's room because specifically Matt Groening did not like it. He thought it was a little bit too over the line of making fun of people's culture. Ultimately, they thought that it was not too... It was supposed to be lighthearted and not in any manner supposed to be like a jab. They were just trying to show that Apu is like upping the ante at what he's, offering to his choice of worship, his choice of deity, I should say.
Yoo-hoo's not cheap, Miles.
Matt Groening thought that the idea was funnier, that like they already are going to get enough wrong by not like trying to be funny, but they thought that the Yoo-hoo bit would go, and ultimately it obviously got through. On the commentary, which occurred a decade after the show aired, Matt Groening said he was over it and it's fine.
Well, and if you had a problem with that, you didn't have a problem with the next part where he tells Marge he was at the top of his class of 7 million.
At Calcutta Technical Institute, also known as Caltech. Yeah, we start to learn Apu's backstory, essentially, how he came to be here in America. And actually, after graduating at the top of his class of 7 million at Calcutta Tech, he came to Springfield Heights Institute of Technology, which I think is a offshoot of South Harmon Institute, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe you are absolutely correct. We need to not discuss it any further.
I do love that that's The Simpsons did it for one of our favorite movies, and honestly, I didn't realize they had done that in this, so that's so great.
I didn't either. I did not either. What I enjoy is when he says goodbye to his child bride. I listened to him say the name a few times, but it kind of sounded like they were saying Manjula, which I believe is the name of his current wife on the show, like that he gets arranged married to seasons down the road.
You're 100% correct. This was, in fact, the first appearance of Manjula, though at the time, they had no intention to ever bring her back as a character. It was just a one-off joke, and they actually named her after one of the friends of the staff. There was a woman named Manjula that they were friends with outside of The Simpsons, and they were like, hey, we want to use your name. It's a cool name. And she's like, great, thinking it would be the one and only time that it would ever be used.
Wow.
Obviously, it came back later, and I think it's just kind of great how I personally really appreciate when shows keep those things going, and even if it wasn't the idea to start, I'm glad they took the time to go back and be like, oh, he has an arranged marriage set for him back in India, like, this is who that person is.
And she's aged like 18 years, and he has not aged at all, but we're going to go with it. But I love how they keep the continuity of that going over the course of a few seasons. Like, you don't always get continuity. You hardly ever get it with The Simpsons, but in like the really, really Easter eggy moments, they'll throw it in there.
100%, yeah. And of course, they often will just throw that shit out the window for a joke, because ultimately their goal is to be funny, not to create a perfect world of no inconsistencies. But yeah, it is nice whenever they have some of those things that thread along. We also learn, though, that when Apu gets to America, he pursues a career in computer science, where he learns from Professor Frink.
Well, sure, the Frinkiac 7 looks impressive. Don't touch it! But I predict that within 100 years, computers will be twice as powerful, 10,000 times larger, and so expensive that only the 5 richest kings in Europe will own them.
Yeah, he's onto something there. Could it be used for dating?
Well, technically yes, but the computer matches would be so perfect as to eliminate the thrill of romantic conquest. How-hey-oh!
And we see that ultimately, though, Frink turns out that must be an okay teacher, because Apu goes on to create a program of punch cards. It's like an old-school 1980s computer that is actually the world's first tic-tac-toe program.
Ooh, and that's how he got his job at the Quickie Mart, to pay off all the expenses for that.
Yep, unfortunately all that schooling adds up, and he had to get a job behind the clerk's desk there at the Quickie Mart, where he still works to this day.
So he graduated from Calcutta Tech without any student loan debt, then comes to America and goes to our system, and then has massive debt.
Yeah, honestly, is another thing The Simpsons was just spot on about, a little too on the nose. I will say all the computer science stuff came from the fact that David Cohen was, in fact, a real-life computer science major when he was in college, so it's just firsthand from his life experience.
That's crazy to think about.
It's interesting that, Hank Azaria does the voice, but because this episode gives so much depth to the character, there actually ends up being quite a bit of Cohen in Apu that are just, part of the character.
Yeah,
origin.
Exactly. Is this the instance, too, where Bart takes out one of the cards and wrecks the whole tic-tac-toe thing?
Yeah, it was. I love, too, that they're able to kind of summarize it all with, what you're saying is so understandable, and really, your only crime was violating U.S. law. But but Marge is certain enough that she knows that she is going to vote no on 24, and Lisa couldn't be prouder.
Mom, you're the greatest! Can I have this licorice?
I love this moment. Again, we talk about it a lot, but I personally am a big fan of the times where we see that Lisa is both so mature for her age, but still ultimately an 8-year-old girl, and that's exactly what a kid in a candy store does, or a convenience store does, and she pulled it off nicely.
It all makes sense when it doesn't make sense.
Later that night, Kearney approaches the counter wanting to buy 3 cigars, a case of beer, and he hands over a very nice-looking ID. Apu immediately recognizes it as a fake, though he continues to sell the merchandise and isn't even going to charge Kearney for the ice cream sandwiches that he hid in his armpits, as long as he tells Apu where he got the fake documents.
And you see the actual ice cream like melting under his armpits. Like they animate it. They actually animate this.
And his
You see the brown
face,
stains
dude. Like,
appearing.
not only do you see the stains, but like Kearney's face is so good. Like, you can see the shame,
Gulp.
surprise, and fear in his image right there.
He went a little too far. Maybe the ice cream sandwiches were a stretch on this one.
Yeah. Just get away with your fake ID and pay for your merch, man. But he learns that Fat Tony can hook him up with an entire set of documents: his birth certificate, his driver's license, social security card, and his death certificate, which he should just hold on to till later.
And he tells him he needs to start acting more American.
He does. He does mention that he should start acting a little more American just to blend in. And boy, oh boy, does Apu take that suggestion, because the next day at the Quickie Mart, we see Homer walk in, and the entire place is decked out in red, white, and blue, except for the white, blue, and orange New York Mets jersey that Apu is wearing behind the counter, along with his Texas-themed, or his American-themed cowboy hat, I'll point out.
Yeah, it's a little too much there, but it definitely works for the scene.
Apu's line is so great, too. He's like, "Hey, fellow America, want to take a relaxed attitude towards work and take in the baseball match? The Nye Mets are my favorite squadron."
Shout out to Mr. Michael Price there. I hope the Nye Mets have a good season, sir.
Oh yeah, good call. You know, and also Hank Azaria, because believe it or not, this was originally written. In fact, I even noticed just a moment ago in this one line in the script, it's still written as the New York Yankees. And Hank Azaria,
Really?
the voice of Apu, actually requested it be changed to the Mets because he is also a real life Mets fan.
Oh, that's clever. That is very clever, actually. And the Yankees, I mean, everybody likes the Yankees or hates the Yankees.
So
it's
cliche.
funnier to make fun of the Mets.
Agreed. I do really like that Hank Azaria, though. Say what you will, I understand that this is part of the controversy, but just from a voice acting standpoint, looking at the way that Hank Azaria does an Indian accent that's attempting to sound American is really, really impressive.
Yeah, it is.
Homer asks what happens to Apu's statue of Ganesha, and Apu just starts cracking up at first, but then he starts breaking down as he realizes that maybe replacing his god with a stack of Entertainment Weekly magazines is a betrayal of his culture.
This passport is a cheap forgery! A cheap $2,000 forgery!
Whoops. I really like here, though, as Homer and Apu go to the back, Apu is essentially explaining that he just can't do this. Like, this is his life, and he can't be himself. It's not worth him being in America, because he wants to be in a place where he can live, and he can love, and he can charge whatever he wants. I like that line a lot, for what it's worth.
It's very American, too. Darn it, Apu. I'm not gonna let them kick you out.
He pulls off his Yes on 24 button.
I never should have bought this button. Can I have my $3 back?
Store credit only.
I think if you're Homer, you take that deal, right?
You have to, but I have this written down as my favorite joke, just the fact that Apu is in fact selling the buttons that are against his cause, because isn't that really the American dream, is overcharging people for their dumb ideas that they want to that's the business model of fidget spinners. Like, let's be real.
You need something to play with so that you can stay focused on playing with that thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't get it.
I don't get. I've still never even used it.
I have several that I got for like $1 on clearance, but like for a while.
Oh, it worked.
No, yeah, well, I give them to my nephews, but I'll pay I'll pay $1. They're well constructed for $1, but some of the prices when those things came out were like pretty ridiculous. Either way, I really love Homer's line too in there. We missed it, but he says, "You must love this country more than I love a cold beer on a hot Christmas morning."
Well, if it's Texas, that is correct.
It definitely can be. And that actually brings us to the end of our second act, but we're going to once again just roll right on through as Homer brings Apu to the Simpsons' house. And Lisa's excited because she realizes that now they have the entire Simpsons family supporting Apu.
That's nice, although 3 of you are below voting age.
And I'm not registered. I like that Homer always sounds proud of that.
There have been multiple voting jokes over the seasons where we realize Homer doesn't actually do it.
Makes sense.
And we'll see it happen again in the future when the grandparents take over the town and they win the vote by 1 vote. And
he didn't flush the toilet either direction?
Yeah, and he's like, it probably would have had an impact on the outcome.
Well, for now, the family's just trying to think of any way they can to keep Apu in the country, and Bart has a great suggestion. Why not marry some American broad, then dump her once you get your citizenship?
Good call, Bart.
And that broad is none other than Selma, who Homer calls up, and you can tell he's trying to butter her up just a little bit. He starts out with, "Hello, Selma. Selma, my dear, how are you? Uh-huh. Listen, shut up for a second. How would you like to marry Apu so he doesn't get deported?"
Listen, shut up for a second. I'd rather eat poison. My name's already Selma, Bouvier, Terwilliger, Hutz, McClure. Which, by the way, Miles, I want to see the Hutz interaction. Where did that come from?
That must have been the first one for money that backfired.
God knows it's been long enough without Nahasa Pima, whatever. From now on, I'm only marrying for love. Possibly once more for money.
So the family continues to sit at the table and think, but Apu is starting to give up hope. Abe has a great suggestion from out of nowhere.
Hey! The government can't control the sky. What if you lived in a balloon?
And surprisingly, at that moment, Lisa seems to agree. That's it!
Hear that? Hear that, Mom? She's as dumb as me.
No, not what Grandpa said. What he is. Grandfather, as in Grandfather Claus. Apu, how long ago did your visa expire?
7 years, but I don't...
There's an amnesty that was declared for people who've lived here as long as you. You can take the citizenship test.
But the vote on Proposition 24 is on Tuesday. You'll have to pass the exam before then.
Oh, that's not nearly enough time to learn over 200 years of American history.
Oh, it can't be that many. Come on, Apu. I'll be your tutor.
And appropriately so, everybody looks very, very concerned by this. Especially since out of all of the things that could be taught, one of them that Homer felt took up an entire, piece of poster board was identifying that Lincoln had a stovepipe hat.
Yes. I've always enjoyed that little poster.
But he starts to teach Apu random facts. Everybody knows that the 13 stripes on the American flag are for good luck, but do you know what these 47 stars represent?
The stars represent the states, but this flag is surely outdated. I believe it is the one that was stolen from the library last year.
I love that he's so accurate with identifying it.
Doesn't Homer go partial credit or something?
Yeah, he does. Partial credit. Meanwhile, Chief Wiggum and the police are preparing to deport the immigrants. They actually are getting ready at the docks with a giant ship, which is also just kind of sad as an image. I mean, they're trying to make a joke here, but it's pretty dark when you see that's how much they're planning on deporting people. Which, by the way, do a lot of towns have the ability to deport people, or is it just Springfield?
It's just whenever it's convenient for Springfield.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy the little quick joke in the metaphor where Wiggum says, first we're going to take your tired, then your meek, then your huddled masses after the New Colossus by Emma Lazarus.
Yes.
Her little poem there, or sonnet, if you will. So
it's the one that's actually at, was it at Ellis Island, or is that the one that's on the Statue of Liberty?
Yeah, I think it's the Statue of Liberty one.
But yeah, that's so great. You're absolutely right. It's a really smart joke on a really sad topic.
Yeah.
Which sometimes humor needs that. There's also another great bit here where they're going over finding Springfield on a map, but of course stuff keeps getting in the way, including Bart's head at one point, which is just put there simply to obscure the shot. So of course at this time the big mystery of where Springfield was kept alive.
And I think it kind of got shoved back from behind the scene into the forefront a little bit after this episode, because I remember being obsessed wanting to know where Springfield was at after this instance.
I'm sure this actually probably put a lot of fuel to the fire, if anything, because anybody who didn't realize that it was a mystery definitely knew it now.
When you had that brief moment, too, where Homer's like, Springfield's right here, and he's like around Chicago, and you're going, oh, is it actually that one? That's the most obvious. And then Lisa's like, no, that's not us.
Yeah, totally. That's the most obvious. I love that. But it gets to the point where Apu's just demanding sleep. He only has 6 hours till his test, but Homer says sleep is for the weak, and he leaves him with his 9th grade history notes while he goes to bed. He, of course, though, almost immediately falls asleep and wakes up in a panic the next day as he's forgotten everything that Mr. Homer has taught him.
Perfect. Let's roll.
And I love Lisa's confidence and like glee in that moment because she knows for sure that anything her dad taught him is probably not really going to help.
That's good. And Apu's pretty smart to begin with, Miles. I mean, like, it pointed it out when he's going over the flag stuff, and I find that like a lot of my friends that have different cultural backgrounds and weren't in our in the education system know like both sides of the coin, and it's like it makes me feel dumb a lot of the times.
Yeah, I don't know that I could pass a citizenship test for what it's worth.
Exactly, yeah. Like it's ridiculous that we put people through so much when we don't do it to our own people half the time.
Though I do really appreciate this test that Apu gets because he's of course asked about the Civil War, which he responds with a very, very good answer. There are many numerous causes. Aside from the obvious between the abolitionist and the anti-abolitionist, there were economic factors, both domestic and
Wait. Just say slavery.
Slavery it is, sir. Cohen talks about on the commentary, this actually came from yet another real-life story where he had a friend in college who was actually a history major at Harvard who was not a citizen until they had to go and take their test. They got asked about the Civil War, which they gave a very complex and thorough understanded answer of because they were a Harvard history major. And the proctor literally just said, just say slavery. And they agreed and got their citizenship.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I'm so happy that this was a real thing. Oh, that's incredibly sad but funny.
You can't out-funny real life sometimes. It's just not possible.
Oh my gosh.
We see that the Simpsons are hosting Apu for a Welcome to America party as he's passed his test, and Apu's just happy that he is no longer an Indian living in America, but he is now an Indian American.
You know, in a way, all Americans are immigrants, except, of course, Native Americans.
Yeah, Native Americans like us, Homer chimes in.
No, I mean American Indians.
Like me? I love that you get this little, it's almost like a who's on first type of bit where it like is, you just keep going in circles with the phrasing of the words and the multiple meanings in the English language. I also really appreciate here that Homer gives a little speech. If I could say just a few words, I'd be a better public speaker. And the only person that reacts at all, even a little bit, is Bart, and he laughs so hard. It's so great. It's fun when you see father and son on the same like wavelength sometimes, and nobody else thinks it's funny.
Yeah, I've always had confusion on that if Bart's laughing at him or with him. Like, I've never known for sure.
Oh, interesting. I always felt like they were like father. This was like a like father like son moment.
I feel like he was trying to get a laugh, but then he gets like the sarcastic laugh that makes Bart laugh even harder. But at the same time, it does have a sense of like, "Hey Bart, I need you to laugh at this part for me, so people will chime in." But I've never been certain on it.
That's fair. I could see the argument from both ways. I am going to point out a small animation mistake right here that I think you'll appreciate if you didn't catch it. Ooh. But when you first see the outside shot approaching the barbecue, all the way on the right side of the table, it's pretty clearly Troy McClure. But when you switch to the perspective of Homer giving his speech, it actually switches to Dr. Nick, and Troy McClure is nowhere to be seen, which is both pointed out on IMDb, and because I knew to look for it, it was very obvious to find when I was watching it back on the DVD.
I did not catch that one. I'm proud of you for bringing that to the table, even though you read it and then saw it.
Yeah, it would have been really difficult to notice if you weren't looking for it, I will admit. Homer actually ends up making a pretty good speech denouncing Proposition 24. They make another chant declaring no on 24, which that was actually a joke in itself because those propositions were often so confusing in real life that people were legitimately confused on which way to vote the way that they wanted. So a lot of times they would have just people making these no on, yes on chants because if that got stuck in somebody's head, they might read it and actually get confused and vote in that manner. And sometimes they were even purposely written to be confusing,
Yeah,
it seems.
I would not be surprised by that.
Unfortunately, though, while the crowd at the party leaves chanting no on 24, we learn from Kent Brockman that it passed in a 95% favor. So yes, clearly overtook it. There is a very funny montage where you see all the various ways that you can vote in Springfield, which include more and more ridiculous things like adding a marble to a jar, blowing out a candle. One of them I kind of jumped at earlier, but it was flushing either the toilet on the left or on the right, and that was actually entirely added by the animation department. And Susie Dieter, the director of this episode, actually remembers being a little bit worried they were going to get in trouble, but it was so short, they were pretty confident they'd get away with it, and they ended up loving it.
That's really cool that like the animation team was like, let's just throw this in there real quick.
Yeah, isn't that
But
fun?
you can get in a lot of trouble with that because that costs money to animate stuff. So,
And it's such a good joke, though, just because it is, like, in terms of absurdity, the toilets is probably the most absurd one.
yeah.
Kent Brockman, though, does declare, when are people gonna learn? Democracy simply doesn't work.
Another
How
popular
true.
meme. Oh, I thought, was that Brockman that said that or Homer?
That's Homer, excuse me. You're totally right. It's Homer that says that. Now I don't know, actually. It's one of the two. I feel like I've seen the meme with Kent Brockman.
Yeah, you're confusing my brain. Let us know on Twitter, everybody, at Best Darn Diddly. Are you Team Kent or Team Homer? This is not a democratic vote, people.
No, because that wouldn't work. We know that for a fact. We have our final scene in our Simpsons reset at the Quickie Mart, where we see Apu really becoming an American citizen when he opens his first jury duty summons, and like a true American, he wads it up and tosses it in the trash can.
And Marge is happy that everything worked out for all the people they care about.
And that's when we see that ship that was deporting immigrants has one lone passenger. None other than Willie looks at the shore as he floats out to sea.
Ach! Ingrates!
And that brings us to the end of the episode. And that brings us to the end of our third act and to the episode Much Apu About Nothing. I'm sure that we have a little bit more to say. Richie, is there anything, first of all, that book of yours would like to say, and of course, anything that you would personally like to say about this episode?
Well, there were a lot of signs in this episode when people were mobbing, basically. This is the best way to do it. Some of them said things like, the only good foreigner is Rod Stewart, buy American, and get your ass back to Eurasia. Man, it feels really sad saying those things. This episode just really, I guess it just really got to me, man. Like, the 95% passing of the vote at the end, I feel like it wouldn't be that thrown to one side in real life, but I feel like it might be pretty close in certain extreme cases, especially if certain groups of people aren't allowed to vote in those items. But I do also want to say, because we've been bad-mouthing our homeland a lot in this episode, Miles, but I do want to say that, like, I still am glad I am an American citizen, and I'm still happy to be living here because we can have viewpoints like we have. We can have, like, an exchange of ideas and talk things out, even though sometimes certain people won't listen to those things or are crazy absurdists. But it's the fact that we have the ability to do that, I think, that makes me happy to be here.
Oh, no doubt, America is the best country in the United States.
Amen?
I have a lot more to say too, or at least a few more things to say from the commentary. I'll do a couple of lighthearted ones. First of all, Academy Award-winning director Brad Bird is actually animated in one of the crowd scenes when they're doing protest. Though a little bit of an anachronism or something that could be considered a little bit wonky, I guess you might say, is in the final scene when Apu is approaching his citizenship test. He actually passes by both Ned Flanders protesting him, which just seems out of character for Ned with his angry face like that. And also, though, even more out of character was Homer himself, who had just spent the night helping Apu study for this test. So it seems a little bit odd that they were drawn into the mobs, but I think that is just the nature of sometimes those scenes get drawn first in the animation process.
That's crazy.
And they go by so quickly, they probably who cares?
Or we don't have enough time to fix it. It's too expensive.
Going back to kind of the real world implications of this episode and how on the nose and ahead of its time it was, I mentioned already this was based on real things that were being reported in the news in California, and illegal immigrants were a hot button topic in California in 1996. In fact, Proposition 24 is based straight off of the real life Proposition 187 that essentially was going to take both healthcare, including emergency healthcare, and education away from illegal immigrants and their children. And
Yeesh.
The saddest part is it passed in California.
Wow.
In fact, one of the governor or mayor of the state, I think it was the governor at the time, I don't have the name, but whoever it was actually recorded reporting saying how, they were immediately going to stop offering prenatal care to illegal immigrants, which is essentially just the most barbaric thing you can think of. Just letting these people literally die in the streets is the idea of this, and then refusing to educate them, making it impossible for them to improve their situation. Fortunately, the country as a whole kind of put a stop to this because that bill, that proposition was deemed unconstitutional and almost immediately reversed. But the simple fact of the matter is there was enough votes to pass it, and that seems exceptionally dark. Especially putting that filter on today's world where we're talking about things like the Muslim country ban and building a wall between Mexico and essentially putting these barricades up for people that they're not the horrific, awful people that certain politicians try to point them out to be. That's just simply not true. And if you're listening to this and you don't agree, I can't encourage you enough to do some research that does not come from Fox News. And if you think all news is fake, you are an insane person. It's just, there's of course things that are embellished in all news. However, there is real reliable news out there available, and I assure you it does not come from Fox. But just to bring a little bit of levity back to this, I do very much appreciate, we talked about in the past many times that episodes have actually been used for education, episodes of The Simpsons, and this episode is no different because it's actually used as study material for many sociology courses throughout the United States, and it includes the University of California at Berkeley, where it's actually used to examine issues of the production and reception of cultural objects, in this case, a satirical cartoon show. And boy, oh boy, does that class seem probably like it would be on fire in terms of the relevancy of what they're doing today. The whole idea of the class is to figure out what it is trying to tell audiences about aspects primarily of American society and, to a lesser extent, about other societies.
That's really good that something good came from something that we've been pointing out as a little bit dark and sad.
Yeah, absolutely. Just looking at the idea of satire and are there lines? If so, where are they? So on and so forth. But I can't reiterate enough from the top of the show that to everyone out there listening, we love you and we appreciate you listening, and we hope that we provide great recaps of a show that we all love together, and that this brings us together from all aspects and all corners of the world, from different world views to just different homelands. And I think that's a really cool thing that a cartoon show can do. And I appreciate every single person everywhere in the world that has ever hit that download button for the Best Darn Diddly Review Show.
And what is it, that new meme that has come out? It says, let's stop using 18th century solutions to fix 21st century problems.
Seems like a good place to start. But that is going to do it for this week's Best Darn Diddly. Thank you again so much for downloading. You know all the stuff about podcasts. Share it, like it, tell people. Patreon.
Make love while listening to it.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Also, make sure you follow the Wiz Kid at thewiz_kid23. Make sure you follow me at Mr. Most Days Off, and of course follow our show at Best Darn Diddly. That's DIDDLY.
We're coming back next week with a special guest from the Derailers to do a very good episode, Homer Palooza.
Woohoo!
So make sure you come back for that podcast. It's going to begin in the old country. I forget which one exactly.
And until next time, be cromulent to each other.